So, as I said, a type 1 error, you're going to remember by root. I'm rejecting the HO when HO is true. And a type 2 error is going to be remembered by float. I'm failing to reject HO, but HA is the true value. Okay, so what's interesting is we make these errors a lot in life. You know, things happen where you have expectations and then something else happens, and and you're kind of stuck with the consequences of that. So one of the big things that you'll be asked to do is identify in a situation what makes a type 1 and type 2 error, and really what are the consequences of that. So I always ask the class this example, and usually this is where I find out that people in my class are dating, and I had no idea. But I ask, is anyone dating anyone? And, there's always someone that's like, yes, I've been with my boyfriend for, 3 months, or sometimes it's like 5 years, which is longer than I've been married, so that's always interesting. So let's look at an HO and an HA assumption, okay, just kind of in the dating world. Now, I'm pretty sure that you go into this relationship assuming that the person you are with is going to be faithful. I would hope you would get into a relationship with someone that you would assume would be faithful, but the alternative is that they are cheating on you. Okay, so let's look at making a type 1 and a type 2 error. So a type 1 error, if you're making a type 1 error in this situation, you are rejecting the null hypothesis. So let me do this, type 1, you think they are cheating, but really, they are faithful. Okay, so you're rejecting HO. You think they're cheating when in fact they actually are. HO is true where they are faithful. So what are the consequences of this? This is what a type 1 error would be. What would happen in real life if you thought someone was cheating on you, but they're really faithful? Well, I think there's a really good portion of this world that would probably just break up with that person if you found out they were cheating. And the problem with that is you'd be breaking up with someone that you think's cheating on you when in fact they haven't done anything wrong at all. They were completely faithful to you. So maybe you're throwing a good relationship to the side, or and giving up on someone that is worth keeping because they are in fact a faithful person and you had a good relationship going all along. So that would be the consequences of a type 1 error. Now a type 2 error in this scenario is when you're failing to reject HO. Okay, so you're failing, I kind of circle this. We're failing to reject HO. So you're under the impression that the person you think the person is faithful. Okay, you're failing to reject HO when HA is true. So you think they're faithful when they are really cheating on you. Okay, so now think about it this way. That you have someone who's cheating on you, and you're going along in this wonderful relationship that you think is so wonderful, when in fact they're not being faithful at all. So what are the consequences of that? Well, who wants to be in a relationship like that? That's very dishonest and sounds pretty horrible. But then again, you don't know any better. So you're just kind of going along. I also think of, do other people know? Are they kind of looking at you and thinking, oh, that poor person, they're being cheated on right now? That's something too to think about. Is you don't know, but others around you know this and are not telling you. So you're just going along thinking everything's great, and the person you're with is faithful when they're cheating behind your back. So that would be like a real life situation where, a type 1 and type 2 errors, they get made. And if I go back to, our system, jury-wise, when you go in to be put on trial for a crime, the assumption is that you are innocent, or it should be. The alternative is that you are proven guilty. So if I'm making a type 1 error in a situation like that, I'm rejecting HO, root, okay, so crossing that out. So we think the person is guilty so we're rejecting HO, we think they're guilty when the person is innocent. So now, in this scenario, what's the consequences of that is you have an innocent person who's in jail, while the actual person who committed the crime is now on the streets. So you got an innocent man in jail for how many years, and if you've watched Making a Murderer, that's something that I kept thinking about, is making, these type 1, 2 errors, and, how it relates to the statistics here. A type 2 error in this scenario is when you fail to reject HO. So it's almost like I'm embracing this. So we think innocent when they are actually guilty. Okay. So now we have a potential murderer, or someone who's committed maybe a horrible crime, that we found them to be not guilty, and we send them back out into the streets. So I don't know what's worse or what's better. They both have pretty awful consequences. An innocent man in prison versus a guilty man walking around that has done a crime. It's they're both pretty awful. But this is what a type 1 and a 2 error, and this is something that does happen in our system. So that's just some real life examples of making this type 1 and type 2 error. Now, when I look here, and let me find a good one. So this is the very first page you ever did when we did significance tests and just practicing, HO and HA. So let's look at, let's see here. I'm trying to think here. Okay, so number 4. So this is a percentage problem. So pi is equal to 0.20, and the alternative is that pi is, they think that if they sell this motivational tape and people listen to it, that they'll have a higher percentage of people will quit smoking. Okay? So here's what happens. If I'm making a type 1 error, I'm rejecting HO, so I think the motivational tape is working, when in fact it's not really doing much at all. So, in this scenario, the sellers of the motivational tape, they might be thinking, I'm rejecting HO, so our tape is working, so we don't really have to put anything into it, when in fact it's just giving the exact same results that had been gotten whether you were using their program or not. A type 2 error is when you're failing to reject HO, so you think that the motivational tape is not working, while in fact it actually is. The alternative is true, that it does work. So, if that's something that you're under the impression of, then you might not even use the motivational tape, and you might, something that could be really beneficial to you, you think doesn't work, and so you'd stop using it. Let's look at another one. There's one with the, here's a good one, transmission. So, and this is another pi. Here it is. So pi is equal to, turns out it's 20% again. So the manufacturers hope that they redesign the transmission component and they've solved the problem. So if they've solved the problem, you're going to get less than 20% of cars needing this needing this. So if I'm here, okay, I'm making a type 1 error. If I'm making a type 1 error, I cross that out. We think that the problem has been fixed when in fact it hasn't. So we're rejecting the null hypothesis when the null hypothesis is true. Now, if this is scary because, the manufacturer is trying to fix this problem, they're putting time and money into it, and it's dangerous. And if they think they've fixed the problem when they haven't, now all of a sudden you have people that they're potentially have their lives in danger getting behind the wheel of these cars. Now, a type 2 error is made when you fail to reject HO, so it's like we embrace this, when in fact the alternative is true. So if you're making a type 2 error, we think that we have not fixed the problem when in fact we actually had. So in terms of the car manufacturer, if something like this is happening, now you're putting more and more money into trying to fix a problem that has already been fixed. So that would be, that's another consequence of a type 2 error. Trying to think if there's any other good ones here that kind of. I think that's enough examples. Hopefully that makes sense for you guys. And that is the end of type 1 and type 2. And remember, a lot of these show up in multiple choice questions. So just knowing what I've discussed in that last video, and then knowing how to apply them and talk about the consequences. Okay, well, have a good day, guys.